Kuki Independence Hills, historical struggle for autonomy in India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. Introduction. The Kuki people, a group of indigenous ethnic communities, have a long and rich history spread across regions of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar, primarily in the hilly terrains bordering these nations. Their cultural identity, historical struggles, and quest for autonomy form an integral part of the region's socio-political history. The Kuki Independence Hills, situated in these three countries, have witnessed distinct yet interconnected historical eras, from pre-colonial times to the present, characterized by a continuous struggle for self-determination and autonomy. This article will explore the Kuki community's history, examining their role and experiences in pre-colonial times, the colonial era, and their contemporary struggles for autonomy in India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar. It will delve into the reasons behind their ongoing resistance movements, the impact of colonial rule on their lives, and the pursuit of recognition for their rights and identity. Please note that the views expressed in this article are the author's own, and Zalengam Media is not responsible for its content. Pre-colonial era. The history of the Kuki people predates colonialism, and their identity and existence were deeply intertwined with the natural environment, cultural practices, and governance structures of their communities. The Kuki were traditionally organized into clans, with their own systems of self-governance and justice, mostly centered around their villages in the hilly regions of northeast India, Myanmar, and parts of Bangladesh. They lived in isolated and self-sustained communities, depending on agriculture, hunting, and gathering, and maintained a rich culture through oral traditions, music, and rituals. The Kuki tribes are considered to be part of the larger Tibeto-Burman linguistic family, and their ancestors migrated into the region from the eastern Himalayas or the plains of China and Tibet, depending on various historical accounts. By the time of their arrival in the present-day areas of India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh, the Kuki were already settled in a vast stretch of forested hills, with many tribes developing distinct dialects, customs, and ways of life. During the pre-colonial era, the Kuki tribes operated within a system of governance that was mostly decentralized. Village elders and chieftains played a pivotal role in decision-making, and tribal leadership was often hereditary. The Kuki were known to have engaged in frequent intertribal skirmishes, but they also had established systems of alliance and intermarriage with other ethnic groups, forming a network of cooperation. Their territory included areas that are now part of the Indian states of Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram, as well as Myanmar's Chin State and Bangladesh's Chittagong Hill tracts. Despite their relative isolation, the Kuki were not immune to external influences, particularly from neighboring kingdoms and empires. However, their autonomy and self-sufficiency enabled them to maintain their distinct identity through the centuries. Colonial era. The colonial era marked a significant turning point in the history of the Kuki people. British colonial expansion into the Indian subcontinent and Southeast Asia fundamentally altered the socio-political landscape of the regions inhabited by the Kuki. The British colonial policies, with their focus on resource extraction, administrative control, and consolidation of power, had a profound impact on the autonomy and freedom of indigenous tribes, including the Kuki. Impact of British rule on the Kuki people. In India, the British Empire expanded into the northeastern region, which was then largely unknown to colonial authorities. The British sought to assert control over the hilly areas by establishing administrative boundaries and integrating indigenous groups into the colonial system. The Kuki people, with their fiercely independent nature and decentralized social structures, resisted the British incursions into their territories. The Kuki were part of a larger group of tribal communities in northeastern India that remained largely autonomous for a long time, but this changed under colonial rule. The British sought to weaken the traditional power structures by implementing new systems of administration and taxation, often clashing with the Kuki's way of life. The introduction of British policies led to an erosion of the Kuki people's land rights and self-governance systems, and many Kuki villages were subjected to military campaigns or forced displacement during this period. In Myanmar, then Burma, the British also colonized the region, and the Chin Hills, which were home to many Kuki tribes, became part of British Burma. As in India, the Kuki people faced similar challenges, including the imposition of foreign rule, land alienation, and the disruption of their traditional governance systems. The British colonial administration in Burma also made attempts to integrate the Kuki tribes into the broader economic and political structures, which led to resistance movements, especially after the economic and social strains of colonial rule became more apparent. In Bangladesh, the Kuki people in the Chittagong Hill Tracts were similarly affected by British colonial policies. The region, home to several ethnic communities, was strategically important due to its proximity to British India and Burma. During British rule, the Kuki faced challenges in maintaining their autonomy, with the introduction of new systems of administration and economic exploitation. The rise of resistance movements. The colonial period saw the rise of various resistance movements among the Kuki and other indigenous groups in the region. The Kuki, like many other tribes, rejected the encroachments of colonial authority and fought to preserve their autonomy. The British faced a number of uprisings, most notably in Manipur and the surrounding regions, where the Kuki played a significant role in opposing the colonial forces. One of the most significant moments of resistance was the Kuki Rebellion, 1917 to 1919, in the hills of Manipur, which was a direct response to British attempts to introduce a more centralized administrative structure. The rebellion was characterized by widespread protests and violent confrontations, and the Kuki's fight was marked by a sense of determination to defend their land, culture, and traditional governance systems. Though the rebellion was ultimately suppressed, it left a lasting legacy of resistance among the Kuki people and other indigenous tribes. Contemporary struggles for autonomy. The post-colonial era did not bring an end to the Kuki people's struggles for autonomy. Rather, it ushered in new challenges, as newly formed national governments sought to consolidate control over the territories formerly governed by colonial powers. India, the Kuki, and the Naga Insurgency. In India, the Kuki people's quest for autonomy has continued in the context of the broader Naga Insurgency. The Naga people, another indigenous group in the region, have long sought independence from India, and the Kuki have shared both common grievances and alliances with the Naga population. However, the relationship between the Kuki and the Naga has been complex, often marked by intertribal conflicts, competition for resources, and political differences. In the 20th century, the Kuki people became increasingly involved in the larger political struggle for self-determination, particularly in the context of the creation of the state of Nagaland in 1963, and subsequent events like the Naga Insurgency, and the formation of various ethnic-based political parties. Some Kuki groups sought separate recognition and autonomy within the Indian Union, establishing their own identity and rights. However, their demands have often been overshadowed by the larger Naga and Meitei populations, leading to frustration and calls for greater political recognition. Bangladesh, the Kuki, and the Chittagong Hill Tracts. In Bangladesh, the Kuki have faced challenges in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, where ethnic tensions between indigenous groups and the Bengali majority have remained a source of conflict. In the 1980s, a major movement for the autonomy of the indigenous people in the region led to the formation of the Parbatya Chattagram, Jana Samhati Samiti, PCJSS, which sought greater political rights and self-governance for the indigenous tribes, including the Kuki. Although a peace agreement was signed in 1997, the region still faces challenges related to the implementation of the accord, and tensions persist between indigenous groups and the government. Myanmar, the Kuki in the context of ethnic conflict. In Myanmar, the Kuki people are part of the larger ethnic mosaic that has been affected by decades of armed conflict between the military government and various ethnic insurgent groups. The Kuki, along with other groups like the Chin and Kachin, have faced marginalization and discrimination. In the Chin State, where many Kuki people live, the search for autonomy has become a key part of the broader struggle for ethnic self-determination. The military's oppressive tactics and lack of recognition for ethnic minorities have fueled insurgencies and led to ongoing violence in the region. The Kuki's demand for autonomy in Myanmar has often been expressed within the broader framework of ethnic self-determination, with calls for greater rights, recognition, and political inclusion. However, the military's control over the region and the lack of meaningful reforms have made progress difficult.
Conclusion. The Kuki people's struggle for autonomy in India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar is a testament to their enduring resilience in the face of colonialism, political marginalization, and ethnic discrimination. From the pre-colonial period through to the modern day, the Kuki have fought to preserve their identity, land, and traditional governance systems. Though their journey has been fraught with challenges, the Kuki people continue to assert their rights and seek recognition for their contributions to the cultural and political fabric of the region. Their struggles are emblematic of the broader issues of indigenous rights and self-determination in South Asia and Southeast Asia, where the fight for autonomy remains an ongoing and dynamic struggle. Disclaimer: Zalengam Media is not responsible for the views and opinions expressed in this article. For more content, subscribe to Zalengam Media.